Welcome to Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Weldin. Today's story is called The Prince's Magic Mirror, an adaptation of a traditional Portuguese folktale written for you by Daniel Hinds. Thanks! Enjoy the episode! The Prince's Magic Mirror. Once upon a time, in a far-away kingdom, a prince named Tomas was looking for a bride. And it wasn't going well. Try as he might, the prince couldn't find someone who liked him for him. Instead, it was an endless parade of young noblewomen who wanted to be queen one day, and just viewed him as a path to the throne. Like he was a set of finely carpeted stairs instead of a whole person with a whole personality. A lot of the suitors assumed Tomas would be shallow, because many princes were shallow. It was a side effect of being raised in a castle and being given everything you wanted whenever you wanted it. When you didn't have to work for things, you ended up not really appreciating them. Luckily for him, Tomas wasn't like that, though. His parents, the wise old king and queen, had done everything in their power to make sure their son was a good, kind, well-rounded person. From the time he was little, he would spend time with all the workers of the castle. He mended clothes with the tailors and beat them clean with the washers. He pulled onions with the gardeners and then turned them into soup with the chefs. He learned to swing a sword with the knights and how to tell a joke from the jesters. His favorite, though, were the horses. He was forever at the stables, learning to ride when he was young and then taking his favorite stallion out for races through the woods when he was older. As a result, the prince was young but wise, tough but fair, and strong but gentle. Everyone agreed he was going to make a wonderful king because he was already a wonderful young man, and he was definitely, absolutely, by no means the sort of whiny, shallow prince you hear about in stories. Still, the nobles and their daughters thought the worst. They would come riding to the castle on horses of snow white and midnight black, trailing matching velvet capes and wearing swords all gilded and studded with gemstones. They would present their beautiful daughters with royal heralds who proudly declared their names. The daughters were beautiful and richly dressed and quiet because that's what they thought a prince wanted. It wasn't what Tomas wanted, though. He wanted a bride that was bright and funny and kind, one that could sew her own dresses and race through the moonlit woods on horseback with him. So one by one, the noblewomen appeared before him, and one by one, the prince turned them down. "I don't need your riches or your beauty," Tomas declared one day. "I'm looking for love, not just a pretty face." He thought that would clear things up, but it only made it worse. The nobles and their daughters still came, but now, instead of approaching on their finest horses all draped with silks and treasure, they would come with guitars and books of poems. The girls would sing romantic songs and offer their hands in marriage with flowery declarations that lasted for hours and ended up saying nothing at all. It was clear that none of them meant a word they said. They were still just trying to use him to be queen. So one by one, they appeared, and one by one, the prince turned them down. "I hate all of this," he said one day to his barber, a kindly man named Miguel. The barber cut his hair and the queen's and kept the king's beard neat, but he was also one of the wisest men in the kingdom, and people were always coming to him for advice. "I can see why," Miguel replied. "These brides-to-be are no good and seek your father's throne. You are looking for love, and they only see a kingdom." "Well, what can I do?" Tomas said. "I want to find someone, but now they're all pretending to love me, and it's even worse than when they thought I wanted someone beautiful and quiet. I want someone interesting, someone funny, someone who could really love me." He sighed, tilting his head for Miguel to snip around his neck. "How do I find real love? It's like trying to find a teardrop in a stormy sea." The barber thought while he snipped and styled the prince's hair. Of course, Tomas had spent some time working for him and knew how to do it himself, but they both preferred to let Miguel do it so they could chat.
"I have an idea," the barber said, "though it's a little strange."
"Oh?" said Tomas with a smile. "Please, tell me." Miguel told him his idea, and while it was more than a little strange, the prince liked it very much. The very next day, another noblewoman was paraded before him. She marched through a grand hall crowded with workers in the castle and people from the nearby town, all eager to get a glimpse of who may be the new queen. "My fair, daring, most courageous prince," she said, already laying it on thick. "I have long loved you from afar. I've seen you riding your war horse like a gallant knight. I've seen you giving food to the poor like the very soul of generosity. Truly, I know that nothing would make me happier than to be your queen. And to love you, of course," she added quickly. Inside, Tomas rolled his eyes. She'd never seen him before. And even if she had, she certainly didn't know him well enough to love him. Instead of just dismissing her as he once would have, though, he smiled and clapped his hands. "Very well," Tomas said. "If you wish to marry me, I have but one request for you." "Anything, my prince," she said. "Barber!" he called. Miguel came out, holding a bundle wrapped in silks, and handed it to the prince as gently as though it were a baby. Tomas unwrapped the silk slowly and pulled out an old hand mirror. "This is a magic mirror, and it doesn't show the reflection of your face, but the reflection of your heart." As Tomas said this, the gathered people gasped and craned their necks to see. "If you truly love me, then we will only see your beautiful reflection. But if you're lying, your reflection will be as ugly as your lies, and then your face will change to match." Tomas looked at the waiting noblewoman and smiled. "But you truly love me, as you've said, so surely you have no fear of looking in my mirror." The girl had turned white as a sheet, her hands trembling. I forgot. I'm actually engaged? Yes, that's it. I already have a husband or a fiancé or whatever. How could I be so forgetful? I better get home. He's probably wondering where I am. Bye!" And with that, the noblewoman turned and fled from the hall. The prince looked at Miguel the barber and smiled. Their plan, and the magic mirror, had worked perfectly. The next day, the crowds gathered again in the grand hall. Tomas took his seat at the front and watched a young noblewoman enter. She was beautiful, with a dress that cost more than most homes, and her hair in a series of waterfall cascaded braids down to the small of her back. "Oh, my prince," she said, "my heart is bursting with love for you. I fear looking directly at you is like looking into the sun, so pure and bright it could overwhelm me. Your very visage lays like kisses upon my skin, and I know for all the world we are meant to be king and queen one day."
"Your words are lovely," Tomas said. "Almost as lovely as your face. I should be honored to have you as my bride if you'll do but one more thing for me."
"Oh, of course," the noblewoman said. "Just tell me what I can do."
"This is a magic mirror," Tomas said again, telling the story of the spell. The crowd remembered the mirror from the last time and watched to see how the noblewoman would react. "If you truly love me, then you will only see your beautiful reflection. But if you're lying, your reflection will be as ugly as your lies, and then your face will change to match."
"Oh, wow," said the noblewoman. "That's amazing. I would definitely look in the mirror, but I just remembered I left a candle burning back at my castle, so I should go and make sure it's out."
"You left a candle burning?"
"Yes, that's right, a candle burning."
"In a castle?"
"Yes, in a castle, in my castle."
"A castle made of stone?"
Yes. Well, anyway, I have to go. Bye." And she fled from the throne room.
Another day brought another noblewoman. This one was famous for her fashion sense and came decked in a dress that caught the light of the sun and sent it spinning in all directions. She was radiant to look upon, and she too told the prince how she loved him from afar. But when he brought out the magic mirror... "Oh, I can't look in that," she said a little too quickly. "Why not?" asked the prince. "Oh, I'm a vampire. I have no reflection. I better get back to my coffin. Yes, the sun sure does hurt. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Okay, bye." And she bustled herself out of the grand hall. That night, Tomas talked again to the barber Miguel. "Your magic mirror plan is working too well," he said. "At this rate, I'll never find a true love." "I think these noblewomen your parents have been inviting are a little too shallow. I've talked to your mother, and she's agreed to open it up to any girl in the kingdom." "Even the commoners?" the prince asked with a smile. "I think that will be better." "I think so too," Miguel agreed. "Now, let's see what happens." The next day, the proclamation went out across the kingdom. Any woman could come and talk to the prince and see if they were a good fit. Of course, word had also spread about the magic mirror, and a lot of the eligible brides, noble and common-born, were too afraid to come. There weren't many suitors, and Tomas grew bored. He spent a lot of time riding his horse through the winding trails. As he waited, a week stretched by, and then another, and another. And then, just when Tomas had begun to give up hope, a familiar young woman entered the hall. She was tall and skinny, with long hair done in a simple braid. She didn't wear a gown or a dress or any kind of finery, but a long black shirt and skirt embroidered with silver thread. "She looks familiar," Tomas whispered to Miguel. "Who is she?" "She's the daughter of your stable master," the barber replied. "She's never introduced herself, very shy, but you may have seen her tending to the horses." Tomas realized he was right. He had seen her brushing and riding the horses many times before, but she was always dressed in a shirt and pants, and her hair was always tucked away. She walked up to the prince, her cheeks reddening with embarrassment, but her chin held high and proud. "My prince," she said. "My name is Camilla. I've seen how tenderly you treat your horse, and that tells me you can be gentle. I saw how you trained that horse from a colt, and that tells me you're also clever and patient. And I've seen you ride headlong through the moonlit trails that wind through the woods, which tells me you know how to adventure. I can't say that I love you already, but I can say that I'd like to take a ride with you, if you're interested." The prince found that he was interested. But there was one more thing to do. "Of course," he said, and pulled out the mirror. "But first, this is a magic mirror." And Tomas shared the story again, quickly now, as he'd grown used to saying the lines. This time, though, his heart was pounding. He wanted her to look, he realized. He wanted her to be telling the truth about her feelings for him, because he thought maybe he had feelings for her, too. All the others had fled, but Camilla walked confidently up to the prince and took the mirror in her hand, which was rough with callus from roping the horses. She held it up to her face, and the crowd let loose a resounding cheer. Her own smiling face was reflected back, calm and plain and beautiful. "Have I passed the test?" she asked. "You have," the prince said, as his cheeks flushed with excitement and relief. He rose to take her by the arm. "Care to go for a ride?" "I'd love to." The pair started to walk from the room, and as they did, they heard a commotion from behind them. The prince turned and saw the mirror in the hand of one of the noblewomen that had run from him before. She had caught her reflection by chance, and when nothing happened... "Well, this isn't magic," she cried out. "This is just a regular mirror." "You're right," the prince said with a smile, and then he turned to Camilla. "But to me, it's magic all the same." And together, they left the grand hall, got on their horses, and rode off into the moonlit woods. The end.
Thanks for listening!